Now up on the Short Time Wrestling podcast, talking with John Lange, the executive director of Beat the Streets Bay Area, a former Nittany Lion and an All-American at that place in, I guess they want to go by University Park now. I don't know, so they really like State College as much anymore as far as the postal codes go, but fresh on the job at Beat the Streets Bay Area. First of all, welcome to the program. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, Jason, I appreciate you having me. It's always good to hear your voice talking about wrestling. So I appreciate the opportunity to get here and join you.
Yeah, so let's go back in time a little bit because I actually hadn't heard your name in a long time. Not since you were the interim head coach at Eastern Michigan. What have you been doing since you were a Division I head coach?
Oh man, yeah, that was quite the year. The interim head coach there at Eastern Michigan. So after that season, I was looking at what next. I wasn't getting the job there. I was newly married. By the end of that season, I think we had been married 6 months. My wife was working for Ernst & Young at the time, making way more money than I was making as a college wrestling coach. So, okay, what's next steps? Do I, find a job in the Detroit metropolitan area? Do I try to stay in wrestling? So I started looking. There weren't a lot of openings for assistant coaches or, even head coaches in any areas that had Ernst & Young offices in the area. So started looking outside of wrestling, collegiate wrestling anyway. And I had a friend out here in California that was actually, he's national champ for Lehigh back in the 80s. And for years had been telling me, you want to coach wrestling, you want to help wrestlers, get into the business world, help out the youth wrestling. So he convinced my wife and I that we should come out to California and go into some kind of business out here. So we came out and looked. I started an insurance brokerage, small businesses providing their medical, dental insurance. And I started helping out at the high schools here in the Bay Area, in town Pleasanton, California. And I did that for about 6 years, and didn't necessarily love insurance. Was kind of always looking for something else to do. That was right about the time of the Affordable Care Act as well. So it was kind of nobody knew where the insurance world was going. I just said, you know what, I'm gonna take a left turn, and I got a job with Shea Homes, in an active adult community, and I actually spent 6 months as the receptionist at the sales center. And so it was interesting to go from, a couple years prior, I was, running a Division I wrestling program, and now I'm baking cookies and welcoming people to a sales center, just waiting for another job to open up with Shea Homes. And I moved into land development about 6 months after that, and worked on a couple projects, putting the infrastructure in for housing communities at the 55 and over development. And then I moved into building houses. I spent the next about 10 years building houses, was running a wrestling club in Pleasanton for the youth in the area. And about 2012, my second child was due, and I decided to step away from the wrestling and really focus on my family, and continued to build the houses. But then I became a baseball coach and was on the Little League board and did that for about 8 years, involved with the Little League. And about that time, about a year or so ago, my oldest, who's now in 8th grade, decided he wanted to try wrestling. So I started getting back into the wrestling in the area, helping out at the local high school. And then again, looking to be more involved, I reached out to Greg Parker, fellow New Yorker, national runner-up for Princeton. He's on the board for Beat the Streets Bay Area. And I said, hey, Greg, I want to get involved. How do I get involved? And I thought it was going to be, volunteering at coaching wrestling, or, helping at events and things like that for fundraising. And about 4 months later, I'm accepting the job as the executive director and trying to help this organization grow. And so it's been an interesting, I guess now, what are we on? 18 years since I moved out to California, which is crazy to think that, 18 years since I coached at Eastern Michigan, and, which is no longer a program, which is very sad to see. And it's crazy how quickly time goes, because I thought I'd be out here for a year or two and then move back east somewhere. So I think I'm Californian now forever.
Yeah, and it's funny you jumped out. You say Pleasanton. I had a roommate in college from Pleasanton. She was on the sailing team. So, and every time I see Pleasanton, I'm thinking, Mo, my roommate, Amador Valley. So I'm guessing
That's where I
is
coached.
the Lehigh is it Yazoo was
It
the
is Pete
is the
Yazzo,
connection down
yes.
there? Yeah,
Pete
because I
Yazzo,
remember
yeah,
seeing.
coached his son for a couple of years, and then he ended up at Virginia for a little bit. Well, he ended up at Virginia and finished at Virginia. He wrestled, I think, his freshman year. But yeah, Amador Valley, and then since then we've moved now to the next town over, Livermore, which is most known for the Livermore National Lab and all the secret stuff they do there. But it's a great area to be in. It really is. Wrestling has a history here. We're trying to get it back to where it was. They were real big in the '80s and '90s, and as demographics change, things change. But it's coming back, and that's where Beat the Streets comes in too, because the Bay Area has had success, with wrestling. There's some good kids that have come out of here. You got Eric Guerrero came out of the Bay Area, and Stephen Abbas and Jason Welch. Right, they're all from the East Bay. And so there's some history here, but Oakland has always kind of struggled. So we're really focusing our programming in Oakland to start with middle schoolers and trying to help build up, give them an avenue to improve their lives. Like wrestling's a small part of it, but we're trying to get them to academically and mentorship and things like that. We're a much younger organization than the other ones. Beat the Streets Bay Area has officially been around since 2019, and I'm the first full-time executive director. So really, this is the first year where we're, as an organization, really all in and trying to get this moving forward and provide these kids with the opportunities to improve their lives.
Yeah, and people know Beat the Streets basically from they know Beat the Streets. Mainly they think of Novogratz and New York City, Beat the Streets New York, whereas there's the national chapter. And while they're all interconnected, funding is not always interconnected. So, Beat the Streets LA and New York are obviously two of the more prominent ones, as is with Mike Powell in Chicago. But when you talk about Bay Area, Tony Rotundo, the notable photographer, he spent time coaching out there, and he had talked about just I think whichever is, I don't know if it was the San Francisco section or the Oakland City section, one of them, they'd never won a match at the state tournament. They'd get their one qualifier through, and they'd always go 0-2. And getting, what is the issue with wrestling in such a rich wrestling area? The Bay Area, as you said, was really rich, but it's the city schools that don't really have the tradition. How does Beat the Streets Bay Area help, do that beyond just the middle school wrestling?
Yeah, well, it's a great point. The Oakland section, I was just down at the California States. We did a joint marketing event with Beat the Streets LA, trying to connect the whole state and get people to understand that, we're here at the grassroots level trying to improve the lives of kids that, don't necessarily have all the tools and pieces to move on after high school. And some of them, getting them to finish high school is the win. And Oakland, Oakland's a great city. It really is. But you see it even with the professional sports, right? The Raiders.
Well,
left.
see, I'm an Angels fan, so I have no love for the Oakland Athletics. Just going to throw that out there right now.
Yeah.
So
well,
let's get that out of the way. Go ahead.
The best thing
you're not going to win me over with Oakland sports championship cheer. Okay, Dave Henderson is still on my nightmare list.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a great example though. They're leaving to go to Vegas. Right? They're following the Raiders. The Raiders are gone. The Warriors, they're still in the Bay Area, but they moved across the bay into the city. So there's this interesting point in Oakland where the major things are looking to leave, but there is a rich community in Oakland. And for whatever reason, the wrestling hasn't flourished there. There are schools that have been there with wrestling programs forever, and there's one coach, Ashley Sherman. He does a great job at Oakland Tech, and he has been there, I think, longer than I've been alive. But he's still there doing it, and they get kids to states because they have their own section. But yeah, they don't win matches at the CIF championships. I'm not even sure they have every weight every year. So our hope is to grow it. And, the nice spot we're in is, we don't care boys, girls, like we are helping wrestling in Oakland and the Bay Area. And wrestling, girls wrestling, women's wrestling is, California in general is flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
The nation is flourishing, right? It's the quickest growing sport. So it's interesting though, because there's not many girls wrestlers in Oakland. And the ones that do tend to go outside of Oakland to go to clubs and learn how to wrestle. So we're trying to change that as well, and that's why we kind of have zeroed in on the middle school level, because we can catch them early in their academic careers. Right, middle school is when academics really start becoming important, where you're actually getting grades and matriculating forward that way. So we just figure it's a good spot, and we're borrowing that from the other sections of Beat the Streets. Where New York, they had a robust middle school program that really helped get that going, and they had 2 kids come out of their program that won the New York States this weekend. Will we get there? I don't know. I would love to. We're talking maybe you and I follow back up in 5 years, 10 years, and we say, hey, man, look at that. Oakland's got a couple state champs, and that would be amazing. But really, that's a small part of it. It's the lessons that wrestling teaches that I think helps, and especially with Oakland and the challenges those residents face. The sport of wrestling is uniquely positioned to help them overcome a lot of those challenges. That's why we've really decided to focus in on the middle school programming to start. And we're growing, which is great. We've added, we had 6 sites last spring. We're going to have anywhere between 11 to 12 sites this spring. Now, how many kids we get at each site will still remain to see. We're starting up in 2 weeks. So we're in that sign up phase right now, and we're trying to work with the schools to find that Pied Piper in the school, like find that teacher that the kids love and will listen to. And we're a completely volunteer organization. You kind of hinted at it with Novogratz and Andy Barth down there in LA. We don't have a guy like that here in the Bay Area, so we are much more looking at grassroots fundraising, and then we're now working towards try to find partnerships with foundations and organizations in the Bay Area to help us, reach that level of being able to provide programming for these kids more so outside of the middle school season as well. Our middle school season, as great as it is, it's 8 weeks that we're touching these kids for, but we want to touch them, and give them options much more than 8 weeks out of a year. There's 52 weeks in the year. We're touching them for 8. Well, while those 8 are great and it teaches them lessons, we need more. We want more. We want to provide them with more. And so, fundraising is always a big deal. And, I'm directly tied to it. I get paid because we fundraise. So, that's, we know our baseline, and, we're working on getting things improved. We're actually just locked in our big annual gala. I don't know if we call it a gala yet. We'll be there, but we're bringing out Greg Warren, great comedian, generously. Yep, yeah.
Red alert.
I think we're gonna maybe have him teach a little bit to the kids when he comes out too about his stalling camp.
Yeah. Well,
the 1-0.
Hey, why score 10 when you only need 1? Right? I mean,
1, right, exactly. But he was gracious enough to say, yep, I'll come out and help you guys out now, which is great. So hopefully that kind of kicks everything off for us this year and kind of gets that momentum going. There's been a lot of interest, which is great to see. I think having my position filled is a big key of that. And yeah, I kind of talked a little bit before we got on. I have a bit of a name in the wrestling world, but it's not, it's been years. And I'm not a Californian. Right. I'm not. So I'm still, learning the people to talk to out here, and I'm not an Oakland resident. So we're overcoming those hurdles. But we have a board member, Reggie Lee, that wrestled at Harvard, lives in Oakland. He does an amazing job for us.
Reggie Lee also has some of the biggest biceps on the planet as well. I mean, he spent some time in Virginia Beach. I'm like, who is that guy? Like, that was Reggie Lee. He wrestled at Harvard. I mean, he is put together. Now, you talked about something about the challenges. Now, right now, a lot of the challenges we have from middle school to high school retention is more about the video game generation. We've got the kids that people we feel, oh, well, our kids, they're not as tough as we were growing up. Kids are afraid to be, you're afraid to punish your kids these days. Kids that are in the beat the streets mold that we're looking to save and looking to bring into the sport, they're not the ones that we're worried about playing games too much. Those are some of the kids that sometimes they have to worry about if they're going to have enough to eat. And in this day and age, there's, the socioeconomic diversity within our sport. We celebrate it, but how is Beat the Streets actually showing that anybody can wrestle, and no matter what you look like? And in California, where you have, you look at the lower weight classes, you have a lot of Latin American population, you have a lot of African American population, a lot of Asian population. So you're getting into cultures where wrestling may be foreign to some of them, no pun intended, and some of them it's part of the culture where their families grew up, and then some of them it's overcoming a language barrier and a socioeconomic barrier as well. So what programs do Beat the Streets Bay Area have to bring them to them and say, and not just that, the 8 weeks you're talking about, but to keep them involved, to make them love the sport, to where they can bring their brothers and sisters into the sport as well?
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges we have. One of the ways we try to overcome those right off the bat is our volunteer coaches are from all over the spectrum of demographic and ethnicity in that. So that helps too. We are actively out there looking for women's wrestlers to help coach as well, right? So that the sixth grade girl that is maybe interested in wrestling sees somebody that looks like her, and she can see the path forward. Maybe not right away, but they can see that there's there. Because that's one of the things you look at our demographics of what we served last year in our programming. 49.6% were of African American and Latinx background. And so, we are a heavily minority driven program. And so we are working for things that, to your point, how do we help them beyond just the wrestling mat? We're looking to institute mentoring and tutoring programs. We're looking to provide through partnerships. At the end of our last 4 weeks of our spring season, every Friday we have a competition night. We bring all the middle schools together at one of the middle schools, and we wrestle matches. And this year we've decided the first night we're going to go strictly like a takedown only event. Then the next week we're going to go strictly mat wrestling event, and then the last 2 weeks we'll do full matches, and then we'll end up with a capstone event on a Saturday at one of the high schools. So make it a bigger, grander event. I have tons of ideas that every time I throw it out, somebody that I on the board or on my staff kind of looks at me like, you might be a little crazy, but I think we need to be a little crazy to make it exciting. But what we're trying to do as well is, these are Friday events. They start right after school ends at 3:00. They go till 5:30. And, we want to build the community aspect as well. So we have some partnerships with some companies in the area, which we're, very lucky to have. That there's giving back to the community is big. And it's not just the Bay Area, but it is big here in the Bay Area, where these corporations are looking for, how do we get our employees involved with the community? So we have a couple of companies that have reached out to us wanting to be involved, kind of a one-stop shop where they bring a bunch of employees and they help in some way. So we've talked about, and we think it's going to, I think could be a really great thing. We are going to have basically a dinner after each event for the athletes and their families, guardians, caretaker, whoever it is, that after the event, we all sit down and just break bread together and build that community. Because as well, too, some of our kids with their socioeconomic background, they may not even know where the dinner's coming from that night. So we're taking, one night a week for a couple of weeks, we can take that worry off the plate of the caregiver. It's an immense help. And again, we're lucky enough to have some partners that are willing to provide the food. And then the idea is, again, beyond the wrestling mat, we're showing this is a community. And I think that's the kind of things that will get kids hooked, that then too will get siblings that the parents are there and say, well, how do I get my little one involved? Or I have an older child. How do I get them involved? So we're just looking ways that we can target and be strategic with our growth as well. The idea right now would be, we run these middle school programs, and as these kids enter high school, we're then growing with them. We're currently looking for space to run an academy style, much like Chicago does, and Philadelphia and New York, where they have these sites where they're outside of the middle school or the high school programming that are there 5 days a week, year round. Again, it's partnerships though, and we're trying to build that. We're in some good talks now, and hopefully, in the next year or so, we can announce that Beat the Streets Bay Area has an Oakland site that is available with tutoring and mentoring and nutritional services and stuff like that. So we're, again, still going to have the wrestling practice, but we'll have more than that as well. So it's a space that these kids can go to year round, a couple days a week, and know that they're in a good community, a safe community. They're with people that have like-minded goals, whether it's, hey, I just want to pass my next test so I can get the grade that I think I should get. On top of, I also want to win more matches next year. It's kind of that whole 360-degree coverage, holistic look at what we can do for these kids.
When you look at what works for other sports, you talked about your experience in Little League Baseball. What does a sport like baseball have over wrestling right now that we can maybe borrow some strategies that have worked throughout the years? And, a lot of coaching is not just developing new technique. It's finding a technique that you saw from somebody else and making it your own. We call it coaching, but it's actually you're kind of stealing an idea and making it your own. So what can we do, and what can Beat the Streets Bay Area do to maybe borrow from that experience that you've had with Little League Baseball? It says, yeah, this worked with baseball. We're going to implement this with wrestling.
Well, and I think, honestly, it's the community building. I mentioned I'd spent 8 or 9 years on the Little League board, and my youngest is 12. He's finishing his traditional run in Little League this year. So I've been involved in Little League for, I guess, 11 years now between the two boys. But it's that community aspect. And that's really what it is. And I really see it with my younger one's involvement this year. We actually switched Little Leagues in town because he wanted to play with his buddies. And that's what it's about, too. And again, it's that community aspect. He had been in the one Little League here in town his whole way through, and it's his last year in Little League. And he said, hey, can I switch? I want to go play with my buddies, because he was on a soccer team with a bunch of guys that played baseball. And thankfully, he was able to get on a team with most of those boys. And again, it's that community, because I'm not a baseball guy. I mean, I stopped playing baseball at, I think, 11, because it was either wrestling or baseball. And for me, I couldn't hit a ball worth to save my life. So it's not a whole lot of fun striking out or getting out every time. And I was pretty good at wrestling, and we got to travel, which, again, that community aspect. I came from a program that we traveled up and down the East Coast, and we'd go and stay in hotels, and we'd swim in the pool on Friday night. And it was the greatest thing in the world. So I think if we can really, with Beat the Streets Bay Area, create that community where people, whether they are Oakland or they're Berkeley or Hayward, and all those kind of areas that are right around Oakland, and we can grow it to where we're Bay Area wrestling, I think we will grow in leaps and bounds. It's very, for lack of a better term, very tribal in the Bay Area. Everybody's very focused on their school. So it's the education piece of getting people to get past that and understand that if we can go wrestling in Oakland and improve these kids' lives through wrestling, it's only going to benefit the greater Bay Area wrestling community as well, right? Good competition, good kids create more good competition and more good kids. So I think that's the biggest thing with baseball that I learned, because, again, I'm not a baseball guy. My teams were never great, but we were always pretty good because I did what you said. I looked at coaches that knew baseball, and I said, well, how do I replicate that? And that's one of the things we're trying to do in creating this community. And with these volunteer coaches, we're instituting a program of, like, here's how you run wrestling practice. Here's some techniques you should use. Here's some keys you should talk about beyond the technique on, like, hey, this isn't going to be easy. The character building, character driven model. We keep trying to get him on the board. He hasn't said yes yet. I don't know that he ever will, but he loves helping us. Jay Jackson wrestled at Stanford. coached at Stanford for a little bit. He coaches at one of the high schools in Fremont here, and he has really put a program together for this character-driven development that is unbelievable. And I think it will make our coaches' lives easier. It will improve the kids' lives so well. But again, that's community, right? Here's a guy that's in Fremont. He's, 30, 40 minutes south of Oakland, but he's stepping up and saying, here, how do we get this to grow? So we're starting to get those footholds and growing it. Robbie Smith, Olympian, great board member, energetic he is amazing. He does PE takeovers and assemblies for us to help recruit kids, and they love it because he's amazing. I watch him.
Does he wear the big flag shirt that he loves to wear?
That and the socks, his stripes on one and stars in the blue field on the other. And
Robbie's socks are actually the socks. So, side note, if you're watching ESPN Plus or watching any of the streams, when you go to click on wrestling and you see the leg with the shoe and the background where you're picking your match to watch, those are Robbie Smith's socks. That's his leg on ESPN Plus. So, in case you didn't know, not his beard, not his shirt, it's his socks.
And his
fitting
beard
for
is
that guy.
It's
pretty gnarly, yeah.
I feel
and you brought up Robbie. I was actually going to bring that up because he has an experience with his, with Coach, the late Coach Mark Halverson, like out of the CYC, the Concord Youth, Community Center there. That was a community thing. It was building that community. So Robbie's got a couple things that he grew up with that are kind of unique to wrestling, and tapping into that type of knowledge. Also, a jovial figure that can also get kids laughing and make it fun too. So it's also good to talk about Robbie, and then Melinda Ripley, who was one of the first junior women's champions out in Fargo, and it's been 20 years since she won her first title. She's been an integral figure with the USA Wrestling chapter out there every summer in Fargo. So I talk a little about their involvement, the USA Wrestling chapter out in California, which is thousands and thousands of kids out there, winning a lot of stop signs, bringing them back to the Golden State. So how do those groups also work with what you guys got going on?
And we're lucky because, like I said, Robbie being a board member and really helping focus with coaching is invaluable, right? Like, even if we were going to pay him, we probably couldn't pay him enough for his experience and his knowledge. In fact, he's lending us use of the Community Youth Center March 17th, Sunday. We're in a couple weeks, we're doing a coaches summit in conjunction with the National Wrestling Coaches Association. We're bringing in all of our Oakland volunteer coaches and high school coaches from the area and having this coaches summit again to build that community. And, look, I've been involved with coaching now 20, 25, 26 years, which makes me feel really old, since I left Penn State and got into the coaching world. But I still can learn things. So it's a great opportunity to bring our coaches together. And, without Robbie, I don't know that we have the ability and the space to do that. And Melinda, she is out there singing our praises to whoever will listen to her. Again, invaluable. She and I actually have a meeting later this week to discuss some more stuff because obviously, to your point, she's very focused on the women's side, but, she's willing to grow wrestling, period. And I think that's some of it too. And I'm trying to come at it from that angle as the executive director is I don't want to focus on boys wrestling, girls wrestling. I want to focus on wrestling. So I think the quicker we can get to that mindset too, it helps us grow. They're two resources that are just so valuable to have with their connections and their knowledge. And then with the new coaching staff there at Stanford, and it goes beyond Chris and his coaching staff. They're willing constantly. Chris and I have talked a few times about how can he help, and obviously we want to help them by spread the word when they have matches and get people to their matches. But his wife Lori, she is quickly becoming one of the biggest resources we can have because of her experience with the Grow Women's Wrestling and D1 Women's Wrestling and that. So again. We're lucky that we're getting these partnerships and these resources in the Bay Area. The Cardinal Wrestling Club and Lori helped us. They had a Travis Lee clinic a couple weeks ago, and all their drop-in registrants, they donated the money to Beat the Streets Bay Area. And so great thing for cross promotion and getting our name out there and providing a great service for people. Travis Lee willing to come in on a Sunday morning and do a clinic is, is great. And he's a former board member that is still involved, staying involved. He just has some work things that make being a board member a little tough right now, but he's always just a phone call away to help in any way he can, which is great too, because again, great wrestling mind. The kids love his clinics. So we're just trying to build those relationships and keep them going. I'm looking forward to working more with Melinda and Robbie, and then the Cardinal Wrestling Club and the RTC there with Lori and Chris Ayers, and again keeping Travis Lee involved and things like that. So it's exciting, but we're early, and but it's about building the momentum and keeping the momentum going.
When we talk about what we can do to contribute, you can go to btsbayarea.org. And one of the interesting things I've noticed here on the donation page is you can donate stock. That's not something I've seen very many places or many nonprofits and stuff. That's obviously with the people that are coming out of Stanford, that are involved, and those of you mentioned Travis Lee with his Cornell background and such. You got some very smart people that are doing some very big things in the finance and such world. So, but donating stock, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, and for me too as well. But we are in a unique area of the country, and we are the Silicon Valley, sits in the Beach Streets Bay Area. We have programming in Silicon Valley in the fall with some elementary level kids at Sunnyvale School District and Evergreen School District in San Jose. They compete in a elementary league, and then again, the idea is as they grow into middle school, we will then have elementary and middle school and things like that. So being in the Silicon Valley and with San Francisco and just the tech sector in the greater Bay Area, it was a way that hey, how can we entice people to give? And my wife is no different. My wife works for Workday, whose CEO is a National Wrestling Hall of Fame member. Carl Eichenbach.
Wife works in HR, very familiar with Workday.
Yeah, no, and part of her compensation is stock. So that's what you see in this area is a lot of folks. Part of their salary in that is stock. Well, it's an easy way to say, hey, you want to give us, we'd love for you to, donate, be involved with the program. Have you thought about this way? And it's an easy is not the right word, but it's an easier avenue for some people to donate money because, mentally it's not leaving their bank account kind of thing. But yeah, it was new to me, but we do get a good number of people that their donations come through stock. And it's easy enough process. We have a partner that handles that exchange, and they get everything goes through the right way. The other way we're testing out. We just started. Actually, we kicked it off this weekend at the California High School States. I mentioned earlier we did a marketing event with Beat the Streets LA, where we were there pitching recurring donations. So instead of doing a one-time, $500 donation, which we'll take, don't misunderstand me. If anybody's willing to donate $500, we will take it. But we're pitching it more of a $10, $20, $40 level every month. Very subscription-based idea, and had a pretty good reception of it, because when people would come over to our booth at the California States, which it's filled with hundreds of wrestlers and their families, and they're all for 3 days walking around, and they come over, and we were offering t-shirts and sweatshirts at different levels of giving, and really great design. Everybody loved it with our logo and LA's logo, and then it said from LA to the Bay, and it had the state of California on it. And one thing with California too is people are very California proud, which is great. So some ways you slap the state of California on something, man, it's automatically a big draw for people. Part of the pitch was, I was saying, the guy actually walked up and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's holding a coffee cup from a large international coffee company. And that costs probably $5-6 for the cup of coffee he's drinking, or more. Depending, I didn't ask him what kind.
What's in the contents of the mug probably costs more than it costs to make the mug, right?
Yes, for sure. But I, started talking to him about it, and he kind of was like hesitant about, wait, so you want $20 a month? And I said, yeah, well, it'd be great because one, you just know what your giving is, and then over the course of the year, you've now donated as much money as you thought about donating here at one time. But the way to look at it is, you get that coffee probably every day of the week, wouldn't you say? And he's like, yeah, probably 6 or so days a week. I said, skip one. Skip once a week for your coffee. At the end of the week, you've got more. At the end of the month, you've now saved more than $20. And so donate $20 to us. You still keep a little bit in your pocket for just by skipping that one, fancy coffee a week. And it was resonating with a lot of people. So we did grab a few recurring donations. It was nice to see. Now we're into that mode of to see how long they stay as a recurring donor. Studies show that most people actually stay for 9 months at least. So if we can get a few hundred of those every year, it's a nice little way to bring that grassroots money in. Really know, you don't have to think about it. So we'll see, and I'm guilty of it. I'll go get my coffee every morning from another large national coffee chain. And, I could easily skip one a week kind of thing.
Yeah, I like my large regional chain of Caribou here in Minnesota. So I'll say that one on the air. But but thing is, we do a lot of that. Yeah, that's a once a week thing. That's not a skip once a week. But anyway.
And I'm a plain coffee guy. But even then, when I look at it, a plain coffee is still $3 or so every time. So we'll see if that works. It's all these ways that we have to be creative because again, we don't have that major kind of one angel donor that, again, hopefully we can build our relationships and get there to some point. But, we are definitely attacking from the grassroots level of fundraising. And then we're working through foundations and other corporations. Because again, when you look at it, especially in this area, a lot of these companies have a philanthropic arm that they look to give money. We just secured a mat for one of our sites through the J.J. Watt Foundation. It's a great partnership if we can keep it going as well, because, you hear the name J.J. Watt, you don't think wrestling, but they loved our mission. They loved what we were doing. We helped the school fill out the paperwork. They're getting a mat. And then that makes it easier for us too, because now that's one less mat we have to worry about and move around. And assuming they take care of it the right way and we take care of it when we're using it, that mat's going to last for years. So it's a great thing. It's looking for those kind of partnerships that we can utilize and help grow our brand and our mission.
Going to move off into a little bit of a fun Who is John Lange segment now. As, of course, we were touching on this before we got to it. And, of course, if you are interested in the big part of contributing, it's btsbayarea.org. But we mentioned your time coaching at Eastern Michigan, but I'm going back to your bracket in 1998, which, again, we're joking because, see, John holds the distinction of being the first wrestler in the full wrestleback era, which began, I believe, in 97, 96, 97 era, where it wasn't follow the leader, where you wrestle 2 matches no matter what. Well, he was the first one to have dropped a first-round match, come all the way back and take third. But we're going to look at the minefield of this bracket, by the way. You went 7-1, but in this bracket, Hardell Moore was the number 1 seed, who many of us saw yesterday when he was on the broadcast with Shane Sparks for the Iowa-Oklahoma State meet.
I will listen to Hardell Moore say the phone book.
Yeah, it's great.
He is amazing with that.
Other names in here: Isaac Wood, who won 4 junior national. Oscar, his brother, won 4 junior national titles. So then we've got, we had talked before, Jamie Kelly, who was, recently passed on. He was a good buddy of mine from college and down here. Byron Tucker, who was from my wrestling club back in Virginia, from Oklahoma. He didn't. He was the 4th seed that year. Eric Hall, buddy from Virginia Tech. Then we got guy from my high school, Jared Fitzpatrick from VMI, was in there. You're in there. Who else? So we still keep going down. And of course, Dwight Gardner wins the weight. that year, the number 3 seed. Jay Huron, who went by his actual full name, Jay Hieronymus from Hofstra. So, I mean, this is a weight class that's got some name recognition to it. But
Yeah, and
Timor Terry,
you're leaving out Timor Terry.
Timor
You know,
Tevon Abel was the 5 seed from Brown. I mean, this was not an easy bracket to navigate, and then you did it the hard way. You went 7 matches on the backside. So if there's something you can draw from this experience to telling your Beat the Streets kids is one, never give up. But how rough was that tournament for you?
that I always joke with folks. Anybody can win 5 straight and win the tournament. Come on, right? That's easy. But to win 7 straight, I mean, that's that's a little extra. No, it was a very interesting tournament, right? I came off winning the Big Tens, feeling great about myself where I was wrestling. I think, at one point that year I was ranked 3rd in the country, and then I dropped a couple matches and dropped in the rankings. Had an injury late in the season, which I honestly think was a godsend because I basically took off from real live wrestling and most of the stuff for like the final 2 weeks of the regular season. So I went into the Big Tens, one, hungry because I hadn't wrestled in a while. And 2, my body felt as good as a body can feel this time of year. You always see that. And then I went out there and wrestled. And again, we're talking 26 years ago. The internet was there, but nothing like it is now. I knew absolutely zero about David Wells from Cal Poly, my first round match. I mean,
yeah, you were the 7 seed that year, just to give those who were, again, pre-internet generation. This was 97, 98 would have been my freshman year in college. So I was on the dial-up days in my dorm, checking out how Jamie Kelly and Mark Strickland did at the tournament that year.
Yeah, and so that match, honestly, and to this day, and I've even watched it, a handful of times since then, I still don't know what happened in that match. I mean, he beat me silly. I think the final score was like 15-5. And
according to WrestlingStats.com, yes, that's what it was.
Yeah. And I honestly, he was a California kid, right? So it was Funk. It was before, Funk existed before Ben Askren. I think some people forget that too. And every scramble we got into, he came out on top, and there was back points involved. I mean, the worst part about that match for me personally, besides losing, right? And now my dream of being a national champ is shattered. He looks over at his coach as we're getting off the mat to shake hands, and I am not kidding you, he looks at his coach and says, "I won," and it was a question. Right? So, it was tough. So, and the way it works is, you basically only wrestle one match that first session at NCAA's, and then you get out of there. And the beauty of that tournament was, and I think every kid since then will be jealous of this, we only weighed in once for that nationals. That was the year that the 3 wrestlers, unfortunately, we lost the 3 wrestlers in the fall semester. So the weights were like, we shut down for like 3 or 4 weeks. We weren't competing. They were trying to figure out what to do. We got the 7-pound allowance. So that's where I'm the last official 158-pound third place finisher, because it became 165 that next year. But I weighed in at 165 once. So leave the arena, and I'm walking with my dad and, feeling sorry about myself. I think I quit 4 times between leaving the arena and getting back to the arena. Told him I wasn't going to go back. This is not doing this. And he said, "Let's get something to eat and, see how you feel." And it is amazing what a healing power a bacon cheeseburger has. Right?
Where was it from? Or was it a restaurant, or was it a fast food slot?
No, it was an actual restaurant. I think maybe even like the hotel lobby restaurant there in Cleveland. But it was a delicious bacon cheeseburger. And so I finished that, and my dad and I were talking. He said, "So what do you think?" I said, I think, let's give it a shot. Well, I made the mistake of looking at the bracket and looking at how many spots, right, to go.
Eyes get real big.
And especially at that point, I hadn't placed yet. I had injuries my 2 previous years. One in Minneapolis in '96, I got hurt in the wrestlebacks and ended up I lost the match and was out. That next year, junior year, I was at 150, and I had we were out in Fresno wrestling. We came out to California to wrestle Fresno State and Bakersfield, and in the Fresno State match, cut my weight completely wrong. Was right after Christmas, and ended up tearing my ligaments and cartilage in my left knee. Wrestle the match, win the match. Wrestle the next day against Bakersfield with it taped up. Win that match, get back, do all the testing, and then I sit for a month. So that month ends. There's no medical red shirt at that point. I had wrestled too many times. So I decide, well, let me give it a go. I moved up to 158. Second match back, I tore my ACL on my other knee in Wisconsin on my 21st birthday of all days, too. But again, can't not wrestle. So I taped up both knees, qualified for nationals. And then I actually wrestled Dwight Gardner that year in the wrestlebacks. I lost 7-6 on riding time, and he went on to place. And then obviously the next year, our senior year, he ends up winning it. So I'd always had injuries. I had never placed, so that it was interesting too. I didn't look at what was third. I looked at what was it to be All-American. And it was a lot of matches. It was like 3 or 4 matches to be All-American. So I quickly refocused, and with the help of my coaches, Coach Fritz was amazing that tournament. In fact, there was a couple times where I had to stay away from him because he was getting extra emotional, which was then messing with me. But we mentioned him earlier, Pete Yazzo. He and I go way back. He coached me as a cadet in New York. That's where we had met the first time. So he was always kind of there as a mentor, and he grabbed me Thursday night as I was leaving the arena, and he said, listen, your focus has to be win the next match. 1 point, whatever, a pin, whatever it takes, you win the next match. That's it. And that kind of became my mantra, was just get my hand raised. Win ugly, not win ugly. And then it just, after about 2 matches, it started rolling. That Friday was ridiculous. It was 2 matches in the morning, 2 matches at night. You mentioned, Jay Heron, who I knew as James Hieronymus growing up, both being from Long Island. And that was the match to place. That was the blood round. And my whole mindset was not even like, oh, you win this, you're All-American. It was, you cannot lose to Hieronymus. He was a 126 pounder when I was a senior in high school. He's a year or two younger than me, and he was like a 26 pounder. I was a 55 pounder. I hadn't really grown. And now I'm looking at, he wrestled for Hofstra, and no knock on Hofstra. I coached at Hofstra the following year. Tom Ryan did an amazing job there. He gave me my start in coaching, owe a lot to Hofstra. But I was like, there is no way I'm losing to Hofstra and James Hieronymus. And we went to overtime. Right. So again, that whole win ugly. And, but it's interesting because that match ends and I could just feel the weight gone. That next match, I guess it would be the Conti quarters. I wrestled David Wells from Cal Poly again. And all I did was, I'm a left-footed lead. I switched and went right foot lead the entire match. It was 15-2 when I pinned him, which, again, I get back to the hotel that night, and now I'm mad because it's like, well, why didn't I do that first round? Right? That alarm went off Saturday morning, and I couldn't move. My body just hurt. Any wrestling tournament like that's a grind, especially now when you're talking about, Division I, national championships. I get to the arena, and they were doing a weight study, so they asked me to get on the scale, and I was like, "Well, I didn't weigh in yet." And they're like, "Oh, that's fine." I got on the scale. I was 183 pounds. Wrestling,
and this was 158.
Yes, yeah.
But plus, so 160. You're still 18 pounds over the 7.
Yeah. But the best part is there's 2 other wrestlers. I won't say who they are. They were both All-Americans at 150, I guess 157 that tournament, and they both weighed 180 pounds. So you look at it that way, I was actually light.
I just remember and of course the tragedy, what it was that led to the change in the rules is not the topic, but I just remember it was my freshman year at that place in Norfolk, and some of the freshman guys were on the team that lived down the end of my hall. I just remember them coming, we get 7 pounds, yeah, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, You guys don't even start. Like, it was just two guys that were at the bar all the time and doing who knows what else. I know exactly what they were doing, but yeah, we get
No,
7
it
pounds.
was.
You're not
Oh,
starting, okay?
that 7 pounds was a godsend because I went from cutting 10 pounds to make weight the day of
And that
weigh-ins
was
to
that was what, the 18-hour weigh-in back? It was the night
yeah,
before? Yeah.
yeah.
I vaguely remember
Sometimes you
that.
weighed in at noon, but yeah, it was it was a different world back then. And honestly, it's to your point, like it's a tragedy. Jeff Reese and I, the young guy that wrestled at Michigan, he and I were on national teams together coming out of high school. Pretty good friends, especially both being in the Big Ten and being the same year and stuff. So I think for a lot of us, it hit home, especially because that could you look at it and go, that could be me. I was in a sauna, I was riding a bike. So the blessing of it is it's so much better these days, and that's a conversation I have a lot with folks trying to get them, to want to join wrestling. And
They've
as we
seen
talk,
Vision Quest and say, it's just all about weight cutting.
yeah,
As
no,
much
and
as
it's
we
like,
love that movie, it really doesn't sell the sport in the best light about,
no,
oh, this is fun.
yeah, no, it's definitely so much better in that way, and that's how it should be. I went, like I said, I think by that point when they gave us the 7 pounds, I was 4 over the day of weigh-in, so I was like literally like drilling and breaking a sweat, and I was on weight, which is how it should be. And I think you see it too. Kids are much better. They're better technically. They're better wrestlers now because they're not focused on cutting weight. Where even if you did it right, you still spent a large portion of your time cutting weight. Where now they're working on technique and getting better. So a lot of great things came out of that. The biggest thing for me with that national tournament was, yeah, I'm the first guy to win 7. I took third. Third is an amazing accomplishment, but there's 10 third place finishers every year, right? I'm 26 years ago. There's been how many third place finishers since me? But for me personally, I actually avenged like 3 or 4 losses from my career making that run. And so, those are the things I take out of it. Like, am I bummed that I wasn't on the raised platform that night? Yeah. In fact, I joked that tournament that like, hey, maybe we should do like baseball does. And I should get to go against the second place guy because I hadn't wrestled him yet. And if I beat him, I should go against the champion because I hadn't wrestled him yet. Although I don't think my body would have agreed with me. But I left there knowing that all that work I had done, and I think this will help me as the executive director and singing the praises of what wrestling can do for kids is all those lessons I learned along the way that I probably at 18 to 22 didn't really know were lessons helped me refocus and get through that grind and become what I was able to do with taking third and you learn way more from a loss than you do a victory and all that kind of stuff. It's fun to look back at, especially this time of year. Occasionally my name comes up, which is really nice.
Well, yeah, it's the first line in page. I think it'll be page 137 of the preview guide. I don't know. We're still right there, but yeah, that list in the modern era is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's only been 8 guys to do it since you did it in '98.
Yeah, and side note on that, every year that's what I look at in the bracket on Saturday. I don't, I'm obviously
It's like that bottom half. You're like, okay, where did this guy lose?
Yep. Exactly. I'm obviously emotionally invested, and I love watching the guys wrestle for the national title. Like that's what we all wrestle for, and it is great. It's a great show, right? It's become an amazing show. ESPN has done a great job with making it that way. But I always go to the third place guy, and I go backwards in the bracket to see where he dropped in. And I'm not going to lie, part of me is happy when they didn't make the whole run through. Right? In fact, maybe we should start a thing at nationals where all of us guys that did it the wrong way get together and share stories.
Okay, so that list is okay. So 98, and this is all this is in wrestlingpreviewguide.com. There's a little sales pitch for that. But 98 was you. You were the 7 seed, and you did have the win. You did meet Wells on the backside, going 7-1. Larry Quizzle was the 4 seed in '99. lost to Corey Wallman in the first round. Did not meet him on the backside, but had the pigtail. He's the only one to have won 8. And then, of course, he makes the finals the next year. He won, what was that, like 8 plus, like 13 wins in a row at nationals, I think is the record for him. Then it wasn't until 2004, J.D. Bergman was unseeded and did it. He's the only guy that was an unseeded guy. He lost to B.J. Padden in overtime, didn't wrestle him on the backside. Dustin Minotti did it, didn't meet Tony Hook on the backside. Donnie Vinson was the 4 seed. Him and Quizzle were both 4 seeds and lost, and he lost to Nick Lester. Majors him on the backside. AJ Schott from Edinburgh lost to Caleb Richardson, didn't meet him on the backside. Zach Epperly in 2016 lost to Casey Kent, wrestled him for 3rd and 4th and won that. And then Emery Parker in 2018 was the last one. He was the 10 seed, lost to Chip Ness, and then beat him in the Concy quarters. So, interestingly enough, there's been 2 4 seeds and 1 unseeded guy to do it of the 8.
Yeah, it's crazy. And a couple of fun facts about that too. So that next year, 99, I was coaching at Hofstra. NCAAs were at Penn State. And Penn State Radio, Jeff Byers, does an amazing job. You know, he's been there forever now. He actually pulled me into the radio, and I was on the radio with him for a little bit during medal matches. And after that, I ran down to the floor because I wanted to talk to some of the Penn State guys and stuff. And I ran into Quizell and what was the coach's name there?
Greg Randall.
Greg Randall in the stairway going down to the floor. They were coming up. And so I knew who he was. I said, hey, congratulations. Amazing job. I don't know if you know what you did. And Greg Randall goes, Larry, that's Lange. And they had a discussion when he lost in the first round. This is what they told me. That, hey, you got to pull a Lange now. So for a little while, I was a verb too, which is kind of cool.
You know what? As one of the 2 announcers at nationals, I can bring that back. I can. I'll keep an eye on it. I'm writing it down. I'll make that. Do I say it's a promise? Because if I don't do it, there's video proof that I didn't do it.
If you do it, that'd be great. And then, Minotti is we're tangentially connected because he is cousins with Biff Walliser, who was my teammate. And so, and then, Donnie Vinson's a New York kid, right? He was a Binghamton. So, in some ways I'm connected to a couple of the guys that did it, but yeah, it's an exclusive club, I guess, but it's not necessarily one you want to be in.
Here's one. Chris Ayers was in Quizzle's bracket too on the backside.
Yeah.
he didn't run into him because Ayers had to wrestle Brian Snyder on that side, but yeah, man. I'm just looking at Quizzle's draw. Jeez, Jimmy Arias. Mark Weeder was in there. Let's see. Jorgensen. Yeah, wow. There was a lot of That's the one thing when you look at the wrestle. I'm looking at the wrestlebacks like, I'll go back to 25 years ago when, guys, when I'm just getting into the sport of college wrestling, I'm like, oh, I remember that guy. It's like, whoa, they were in the, yeah. So
yeah,
it's the inner geek
great.
out. But.
And then, that Saturday too, as well, Timor Terry was hurt, so he injury defaulted down to like 6th, which meant Tavon Abel, he and I wrestled in the Concy semis, went to overtime, and I had never beaten Tavon before that. We had wrestled a bunch in high school and that. So one of those losses that I avenged. Well, Ryan Cunningham, the younger brother of the Cunninghams, of Casey, now of Penn State, fame, and Ryan had a bye into the 3rd, 4th place match because Timor Terry injury defaulted. So I went from, overtime to make All-American, wrestled Friday night, overtime Saturday morning, then, wrestling a kid that, was quote unquote fresh.
And to his credit too, he had won 4 matches just to get to that Concy semi too. So he had lost early.
Yeah. So he was, he was the lucky one, right? Why couldn't Timor have been on my side of the bracket? And that was back in the day too, when, we wrestled at like 8 a.m. because they wanted the finals to be live. And so everything was bumped up and, so I remember
was that when finals were like at 2 p.m?
Something like that. Yeah.
I think in 2003, I think it was my second year. I think, cause I'm thinking 2002, I think Kale's finals because that was the year, my first year. I think that was in the evening, if I recall correctly. But I know that in 2003 in Kansas City, I remember leaving the venue, going to the hotel. Me and my buddy Charlie Church, who went, it was one of our boosters, donors, whatever you want to call them. We're sitting at, I think we were at a Hooters watching the finals that we had already attended, and it was like 6 p.m. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was one of those
Yeah,
things.
'cause
They used to be in the afternoon.
edited so they can get it on TV at like 5 or 6 in the evening. Yeah, and I remember walking to that Cleveland Convocation Center, and again, my body hurt, and it was darn near empty, right? Like, there just wasn't, people weren't getting up for 8 o'clock in the
That's the
morning.
hangover round at Nationals. That's
Yes.
the one that, like, even because it's it's the medal round. It's still earlier, but it's not like it's like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and it's still like, well, where are my buddies? I'll look and be like, yeah, they're sleeping it off.
Yeah. No,
So
it was great because the fans, I had a couple of buddies that showed up, and one of which went on to play in the NFL, and he was back in Cleveland just getting ready for the draft. He showed up with his dad, and then because there was so few people there, him, his dad, a couple of friends he brought, my dad, like they were all able to get in the first row because there just wasn't people there. So it was great in that way. And I being Penn State, the beauty of Penn State, and even pre-Kale and the dominance, like we've always had great fans. So the Penn Staters showed up, which was nice. It made it a little easier, especially when the match was over. It made it feel a little better. But yeah,
even
much
the ones
different
that might have been groggy, they answered the bell, right? They were there.
Yeah, no, it was great. But yeah, it's crazy to think about what I went through to do that, and what it took. And but again, it gives me lessons, and I catch myself talking to my boys about overcoming and not all that stuff, and it does help when I can say, well, listen, I've been through it. So it does give a little credibility and that. But again,
You could also tell Greg Warren that Wes Wesley's backside in the Afton Quadrangular was not quite the backside that was 1998. I wrestled 8 matches in that tournament. Okay, come talk to me later about it. But John, in the time we got left, talk us a little bit about circling back with BTS Bay Area, btsbayarea.org. How can they contribute? What's coming? What's the next steps? What's next for you?
Okay, yeah. So again, anybody, if anybody's looking to help wrestling and help kids in underserved communities, hit our website up, btsbayarea.org. We have a donation button. There's multiple ways to donate. Again, you mentioned it. If you have stock and you'd like to donate that's an option. We obviously have the one-time donations, and then we're doing this recurring to see how that works, and getting some good feedback there. But we're also looking for friends of the organization, right? We understand that not everybody that wants to get involved can donate money. So especially anybody in the Bay Area that's looking to help, please reach out. We have our contact information on the website. We will take any kind of help we can get. We need manpower. We're always looking for coaches in the Oakland area to help with the program. And then again, we have the South Bay. We are looking to expand to San Francisco as well. We're waiting to hear about a grant to help with that programming. So, that's to be stay tuned. I'll say, we will be in the San Francisco to help. The same with the San Francisco area is very similar to Oakland, and people don't understand that because they hear San Francisco and, houses cost ridiculous amounts of money to live there. But, there's plenty of people that need assistance in San Francisco. So we're hoping to get into there. So we're always looking for friends of the organization to sing our praises, and any kind of volunteering helps. Even if you know somebody you think can help, be a connector. We're looking, again, we're completely grassroots, and anybody that can help us accomplish those goals, we will love. The Greg Warren event in June. So again, if you're in the Bay Area, be looking. We're going to start putting that out. A night of comedy in San Francisco with Greg Warren. And we're also looking to get support with some of other events. We're trying to line up a big college dual meet here the early next season, where Stanford has been gracious enough to say, let's see if we can work something out, get somebody in to wrestle Stanford and do a big kind of show with, very similar to, I would say, like a BJC duel that Penn State does, or, the national finals, where it's an event. That way we can get people involved and understand what we're trying to do.
Been good catching up. It's been a number of years, but tell some stories about that 98 bracket and what you're doing now with Beat the Streets Bay Area. John Lange, it's been good catching up, man. And like I said, whatever you guys need, just don't hesitate to give me a shout.
Great, Jason. I really appreciate it. I'll make sure I say hello to you at the NCAA's this year in Kansas City.
I have to just make sure I write down that. See right there. See, pull a Lange right there. Got it.
There you go. There you go. And in some respects, hopefully nobody has to do that. But if they do, hey, it'd be awesome.
Well, it'll get talked about for sure. And we'll have to make sure it's okay. We're bringing it back. We're going to bring it back.